Have you ever stopped and truly thought about how unlikely it is that you are here? Not simply that you were born, not simply that Earth exists, but that a universe capable of producing life exists at all. Before there were human beings, before there were animals, before there were oceans, before there were planets, and even before the first stars began to shine, there were laws, gravity, electromagnetism, the forces that hold atoms together, the behavior of matter, the properties of energy. And somehow, these laws work together in a way that allows stars to exist, planets to form, complex chemistry to develop, and eventually, life to appear. But here's where the mystery begins. The universe did not obviously have to be this way. Change some of its fundamental properties significantly, and the universe we know could become completely different. No stable stars, no complex chemistry, no Earth, no plants, no animals, and no human beings looking toward the heavens, wondering why they exist. So perhaps the greatest question is not, how did life develop? Perhaps the greater question is, why does the universe allow life to exist in the first place? Was everything simply an extraordinary accident? Are there countless universes and we just happen to live in the right one? Is there some deeper law of physics that humanity has not yet discovered? Or does the remarkable order of nature point beyond nature itself toward intelligence, toward purpose, toward a divine architect? This is the mystery of the probability of life. And once you understand the question, you may never look at the universe the same way again. Look around you. Everything appears normal. You release an object and it falls. The earth travels around the sun. Water freezes. Stars shine. Atoms behave according to predictable patterns. We consider these things ordinary because this is the only universe we have ever experienced. But imagine, for just a moment, that the fundamental structure of reality were different. Imagine gravity behaving very differently. Imagine atoms being unable to remain stable. Imagine stars burning out almost immediately or never forming at all. Imagine a universe where complex chemistry could never develop. Such a universe might exist, but life as we know it could not. Scientists and philosophers often discuss this mystery using a fascinating concept called fine-tuning. Fine-tuning refers to the observation that certain features of our universe fall within ranges compatible with complex structures and ultimately life. Think of it this way. Imagine entering a massive control room. In front of you are dozens of controls. Each one affects something fundamental. One influences gravity, another influences atomic structure, another affects how matter behaves, another influences cosmic expansion. And somehow, the combination permits galaxies, stars, planets, chemistry, and eventually you. Naturally, you would want to ask, why are the controls set this way? Consider gravity. Gravity feels completely ordinary. You drop something and it falls. But on the cosmic scale, gravity helps shape the universe. Gravity helps gather matter together. It contributes to the formation of stars. It keeps planets traveling around their stars. And without stars, you would not exist, because the atoms inside your body have an extraordinary history. The carbon associated with life, the oxygen you breathe, the calcium inside your bones, all belong to a cosmic story stretching far beyond Earth. Many heavier elements were produced through processes involving stars and stellar explosions. In a very real sense, the material making up your body has a history written in the stars. Think about that. When you raise your hand, you are looking at matter whose story stretches back billions of years. The universe needed enough stability and enough time for generations of cosmic processes to unfold. Stars had to form, elements had to be produced, planetary systems had to develop, complex chemistry had to become possible, and eventually, on at least one small planet, something extraordinary happened. Life appeared. Now consider one particular element, carbon. Carbon is extraordinarily important to life as we know it. It can form stable bonds with many other atoms. It can produce chains, rings, and incredibly complicated molecular structures. Your proteins depend on carbon chemistry. Your DNA depends on carbon chemistry. Your cells depend on carbon chemistry. But carbon had to come from somewhere. Inside stars, nuclear processes transform lighter elements into heavier ones, and the physics involved happens to allow significant amounts of carbon to be produced. Now, this does not automatically prove God exists, and we should be careful not to pretend that science says something it does not. Science can explain physical processes. It can describe what happens inside stars. It can investigate atoms. It can study chemical reactions. But behind those explanations, another question remains. Why does nature possess laws capable of producing complexity in the first place? Science may tell us how, but philosophy and theology dare to ask, why? Now, look beyond the stars. Look at the universe itself. Our universe is expanding, and the history of that expansion matters. If cosmic conditions had developed very differently, matter might never have organized into galaxies and stars in the way we observe today, but there is something else about the universe that is easy to overlook. The universe is understandable. Think about how strange that is. Human beings can write mathematical equations and use those equations to describe events happening millions, even billions, of light years away. We can calculate planetary motion. We can predict eclipses. We can study black holes. We can examine distant galaxies. Your brain, a biological organ inside your skull, can somehow understand mathematical patterns operating throughout the cosmos. Why? Why should reality be mathematically intelligible? And why should human minds, produced within that reality, be capable of understanding it? For many believers, this is another clue. Perhaps the universe is not meaningless chaos. Perhaps reality possesses order because order was intended. But now, the mystery becomes even more personal, because inside your body is something astonishing. DNA. Inside almost every cell, DNA carries biological information necessary for the development and functioning of life. The human genome contains billions of DNA base pairs, and through an incredibly complex biological system, cells read, copy, repair, and use genetic information. But we need to make something clear. The complexity of life does not mean that every organism suddenly appeared exactly as we see it today. Evolution through natural selection provides a scientific explanation for how living populations change over enormous periods of time. So the argument is not simply life is complicated, therefore God. The question goes deeper. Why is there a universe where chemistry can become biology? Why can matter organize into systems capable of reproduction? Why can evolution operate at all? Why does the universe possess the conditions necessary for life to begin, survive, change, and become increasingly diverse? Evolution can describe how living populations develop after life exists, but the deeper mystery remains. Why does a life-permitting universe exist at all? Perhaps, you might say, we simply got lucky, and that possibility deserves serious consideration. After all, unlikely events happen every day. Shuffle a deck of cards. The exact arrangement you receive may be incredibly unlikely, but some arrangement had to appear. This is why we must be careful when talking about the probability of our universe. We do not currently know every possible kind of universe, and we do not know exactly how probabilities should be assigned to every possible value of the laws and constants of nature. So intellectual humility matters. But even after admitting that, the question remains, why does our universe permit life? One possible answer says, perhaps the universe could not have been different. Maybe deeper physical laws eventually will show that the universe had to possess these properties. Another possibility is the multiverse. Perhaps our universe is only one among an enormous number of universes. Different universes could possess different conditions. If enough exist, perhaps eventually one would contain conditions suitable for observers. And naturally, we would find ourselves in that universe. This connects with something called the anthropic principle. We observe a universe compatible with life, because if the universe were not compatible with life, we would not be here to observe it. That is important. But it raises another question. Even if there are countless universes, why does there exist a reality capable of producing universes, laws, matter, and eventually observers? At some point, the question seems to return, why is there something rather than nothing? And this is where the idea of a divine architect enters the conversation. Imagine walking through an empty desert. For hundreds of kilometers, there is nothing. Then suddenly, you discover a functioning smartphone lying in the sand. You examine it. There is a screen, a battery, circuits, software. Every component works together. Would you conclude that wind, sand, heat, and time accidentally assembled the phone? Probably not. You would recognize organization that points toward intelligence. The fine-tuning argument asks whether something similar could be true of the universe, not because the universe is literally a machine, but because its life-permitting order demands an explanation. For Christians, this idea immediately brings us to the opening words of Scripture. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis begins with something profound. Before creation, God. Before humanity, God. Before earth, God. Before the stars, God. Before matter, God. Reality does not create God. God creates reality. And Psalm 19 declares, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The biblical writers looked at creation and saw evidence pointing beyond creation. The stars were not gods. The sun was not God. Nature itself was not God. Nature was the workmanship, and God was the architect. Sometimes people are told that they must choose science or God, but perhaps that is a false choice. Imagine someone explaining exactly how a car engine works. They describe combustion, pressure, fuel, movement, every mechanical process. Have they proven that the engineer does not exist? Of course not. Explaining the mechanism does not automatically remove the possibility of a designer behind the mechanism. Similarly, understanding how stars form does not necessarily answer why there is a universe governed by laws that allow stars to form. Understanding evolution does not necessarily answer why anything exists in the first place. Understanding the human brain does not automatically explain why subjective consciousness exists. Science is extraordinarily powerful, but science generally investigates how things behave within nature. The question of why nature exists at all moves into philosophy and theology. Perhaps discovering the laws does not eliminate the possibility of a lawgiver. Perhaps understanding creation can deepen the mystery of the Creator. And now, we arrive at perhaps the strangest mystery of all, you. Forget the galaxies for a moment. Forget distant stars. Forget the equations. Think about yourself. You are made from matter belonging to this universe, and yet you are conscious. You remember your childhood. You imagine tomorrow. You experience love, fear, joy, regret, hope. You can look toward the stars and wonder why they exist. Think about how extraordinary that is. The universe contains creatures capable of looking back at the universe and asking what it means. You are, in a sense, the universe becoming aware enough to ask questions about its own existence. But Christianity makes an even greater claim. It says, you are not merely matter that accidentally became conscious. Genesis says humanity was created in the image of God. That does not mean God physically looks like a human being. It means humanity possesses a unique place within creation. We reason, we create, we love, we make moral choices, we search for meaning, and above all, we possess the capacity to seek our Creator. Perhaps your existence is not merely an accident. Perhaps life itself belongs to a much greater story. So tonight, walk outside and look upward. You may see only a handful of stars, or perhaps hundreds, but beyond what your eyes can see are galaxies containing unimaginable numbers of stars. And beneath your feet, atoms continue obeying laws you did not create. Your heart continues beating. Your brain continues thinking. Your lungs continue breathing. The atoms inside your body carry a history stretching back into the ancient universe. You are standing inside a universe capable of producing life, consciousness, reason, and the ability to ask whether God exists. Does fine-tuning mathematically prove God? No. And faith does not need to pretend that it does. There are serious debates surrounding fine-tuning, the multiverse, physical necessity, the origin of life, and the fundamental laws of nature. But those debates do not make the mystery disappear. They reveal just how deep it is. Why these laws? Why this order? Why a universe capable of life? Why mathematics? Why consciousness? Why anything rather than nothing? Some believe that eventually nature alone will provide every answer. But for the believer, nature itself points beyond nature, toward an intelligence that did not emerge from the universe, but stands behind its existence. An architect who did not discover the laws of reality, but is the reason reality exists at all. And perhaps that is why the deeper humanity looks into the universe, the greater the mystery becomes. Because maybe the ultimate question is not, what are the chances that we are here? Maybe the greater question is, what if we are here because someone intended a universe capable of knowing him? The stars remain above us. The laws of nature continue operating. The universe continues expanding, and humanity continues asking the question that refuses to disappear. Is everything we see the result of an extraordinary cosmic accident? Or, when we look into the heavens, are we looking at the fingerprints of a divine architect